When you're called to create from your true self, it's a very different journey than most people choose to travel. But from everything that I've been listening to and hearing for years and years, and what I've been experiencing, that this is the way the world is going, and it's going to continue going this way, where people are really seeking what is real, what is authentic, what is alive in the moment, rather than things that are just manufactured. And yes, AI is going to provide some of those things that follow a more kind of programmed path. And there may be places we use that, but I think what's going to differentiate people from what is actually going to give them energy and what is just going to be like a photocopy is when they're tapping into their true self at the same time, so they know what to use as a tool instead of to be the follower of it. And so if you've been kind of going along a path where things are working at a certain level, the conventional is working for you, and I find actually a lot of people that have worked with me, they're often at a relatively good place. Things feel like they have been predictable and they've done the right thing, so to speak, but they've also come to a stage where it just doesn't fulfill anymore, and sometimes it actually stops working. And that's when they're willing to go within and find a new way. And I talk a lot about new ways of being, and they're called new because we're not taught them, even though they're extremely natural. To me, I think it's extremely natural to follow the true self when we are kind of awake to it, because it feels viscerally different. It actually gives us energy. There's a sense of expansion to it. There's a sense of ease and naturalness in it. Whereas conventional paths, especially if you're somebody who learns really quickly, you'll find that they also start kind of not working very quickly just as well. For example, so early in my career, I did have full-time jobs, and I had a couple of them, but it was almost like the time I was able to stay in them got shorter and shorter and shorter, because I was kind of progressing at a level that, like, I was kind of already like past where I could go in that particular role, right? So because I enjoy learning, I was like moving forward, but the job or role was not moving at the same speed. And often I ended up doing things that were definitely outside any job description that simply called to me, that intuitively I knew that would be a particular project that would make a big difference, or I would recommend a direction that then expanded the organization in some way, or connected them to kind of new networks that were really important in the industry. And so this kind of just was starting to happen naturally, but my ability to stay in these jobs was getting shorter and shorter and shorter, to the point where I was like, wait a second, this isn't this isn't the path. And I was really called to go into business. And yes, that was many years ago, but I bring up that example because I find that any new beginning, any new level that I'm going to, or the people I'm working with are going to, kind of have that same energy, where things might be working, but they've progressed so far past it that all of a sudden it's like there's a glitch in the matrix, so to speak, right? Things just start feeling different, and suddenly it's like they're called to seek more truth. And so I really love to encourage that. That's been my journey and my experience, and what I've guided lots of people through. And what I find it actually delivers is that sense of expansion and liberation. And that's an extremely common phrase that a lot of people say to me, either very quickly into our work together, or near the end of it, where they're like, I just feel like a different person. I just suddenly feel more free, more like I can do what it is that I know to do, that I can create at the levels. And that shift is really what I get excited about, because I know they're already bright people. They already are capable, like all of us, right? And so they just need that, they require that shift in order to really really embody it, and then they will move on with their knowing. They will get the answers to what do I do, because they have the practical pieces. They understand how to do them when it's time to do them. And if they don't, they're fully capable of learning and putting in the time and energy to learn what it is that they need to do. But is this, to me, there's a decision point. Do we want to go along just a conventional path because it feels safe and comfortable and predictable? Because it feels that way. It doesn't mean that life is going to remain predictable. It just feels that way. It gives us that perception. And I understand why that desire for safety, it calls us, right? It's like a primal desire. But the thing is, the true self actually knows far more. It can see a landscape far beyond what our small human minds can. And when we trust that, but also use our minds and use our brains, use our knowledge, and bring the two together, to me, that's when kind of real magic can happen. And it's for those who desire to really discover who they are and travel in a way through life, through business, through whatever work they're doing, through whatever they're creating in the world, that they're doing it with an energy of aliveness and creation versus predictability necessarily, okay? Because when I love listening to stories about companies that have expanded and where they were when they were a startup and all of that, and you'll hear countless times over and over and over again how the founders of that company always say, oh, I remember those early days. They were tough, but they were the most fun we ever had. We were such a tight team. We were all together, and this happened. There's this energy, and of course, if you want to grow far beyond that, things are going to have to change. You can't hold on to that energy always in that particular way. But what I'm inviting you to consider is that you can bring forth that energy over and over and over again, even as you grow, if you are going into that, like a bigger expansion or next level. And when you do that versus doing things in a more, again, predictable, linear way of, oh, this is the next step and this is the next stage and this is now what I have to do because everybody else is doing it. It takes away your instinct and your gut and you hearing the actual answers that are going to take you further. So I remember a particular place I was working at, and they wanted to, they were looking at another office in the building and saying, hey, let's take over that office because we need that now. And I wasn't involved in that stage, but I was invited to come and check out that office at one point, and so I did. And as soon as I saw it, my first reaction was, this is too small. You're in a growth phase. You should have something like 3 or 5 times this size already, because you're going to grow into it. Now, as I said, I wasn't involved in that level of decision making at the time, so it was, it was kind of too late. That's what they had decided and accepted. And I tell you, I don't remember whether it was a year or so, but they totally outgrew that very quickly. And then because that space was, like a larger space wasn't available in the building anymore, they literally had to have it in another part of the city. And it would have been ideal if they had taken the office space at the time in the same facility. There's so many reasons that would have been of benefit to them. So when people look at just the expected, that's what happens. They are often looking very short term, and that's all they see. And they may look at the budget or this is obvious, we can handle this, but they're not looking at what they can actually handle, what is actually going to come available. And that's what tapping into something beyond the typical allows us to do, and can take us on a trajectory that's far more expansive than we ever thought would be available. Certainly, I know that one of the major benefits for me for not continuing in the career path I initially had was the level of creativity that I have got to exercise, and the level of depth that I get to work with people, because my earlier fields of consulting, it could be very limited to what a company thinks they should do next and all of that. or sometimes when I was doing more like career counseling, it was really looking at, the person's really looking at the short term as well. But now, over many years now, I get to like work with somebody and even an organization and go, okay, let's get beyond the vision that we just think is available to us now. And so that realness and that idea of now, what really feels current. So, marrying that energy awareness with the practical, right? So I'm not saying just ignore that. There's going to always be certain things that kind of what they look like limits that we are meant to play within in a certain way. But when we do that with an awareness of that there's something beyond, we can actually use those to our advantage instead of them actually being limiting. So like an artist, sometimes like if you tell an artist, work with this particular medium, just having that restriction in what they can use will allow them to create more with that particular medium than it would if they were like, oh, do whatever you want, it's total blank canvas. And it just can be overwhelming or not kind of produce the kind of results that limit certain chosen limitations actually can. And that's the same goes for us, whatever we're creating. I want to give you a couple of examples of people that famous people that have created from their own essence instead of just like what's going to be needed out there. And one example, famous British author and illustrator was Beatrice Potter. And first of all, being a woman author at that time was just not something that was done, right? That was respected even. And but her books have really changed the world in many ways. And not only that, but her success, she was able to reserve a lot of land to protect the environment and all of that. And so she, her own like values, she was able to really bring forth into the world in a real material way, not just a thought or an opinion, but in physical reality. She changed a lot of things. And another example is the musician and producer Nile Rodgers. And I remember watching an interview where he said, when he was young, like they were, him and his friends, they were not allowed to get into a club, and the bouncer, whoever was, just saying things to them, and they left, and they were just, they were really upset, they were frustrated, and then they just got into like a different mood where they started goofing around, and they started taking like the words that the bouncer had said and suddenly created a song, and just like to be silly and playful. But then one of them went, wait a second, you've got something there. I think there's a hit here. And when they kind of woke up from their, the state they were in, they were like, wait, okay, let's play with it. And they did. And it ended up becoming like this hit song. And so those are examples where, both these individuals were not looking out to see what is normal in the world, what is expected, but they were really bringing themselves out, their truth out, right? So that's what I'm encouraging, is that playfulness, as in, because we all have something that's going to make a product or service especially unique, and it's more like a masterpiece versus doing something extremely typically. And so, when you are creating from that new level, authenticity and your own passion is going to actually make it so much better. And sometimes it does not happen initially, right? Sometimes there is a waiting period while you're kind of getting used to this new way of being that can make us feel like, oh, it's not working, or now I'm behind other people because they're soaring ahead. But I guess my point is that's rarely that's rarely the whole story, and there's more to it. And when you stick with it, but you also use that energy, your determination, your intention, you use manifestation, you use all the things, and you remain open, that's when sometimes things can kind of leapfrog you forward much faster than you expected. So it's creating from aliveness versus a more manufactured creation style, which will operate on, what the mind knows already, right? Which is the past. It doesn't see the future, so it just operates on previous things. And if you're here to create new things and create new experiences for yourself and operate at new levels, you're going to have to move through that so that you're not restricting yourself needlessly, right? And it takes courage, it takes faith and bravery. But if you do that with also, again, choosing, or recognizing your own edges, right? Because there's a place that sometimes is way beyond our edge and we're not ready for it, and that can, make us feel really wobbly and not show up, excuse me, with the level of confidence that we want. And in other cases, when we're actually kind of doing both, we're seeing, okay, like, where can I challenge myself, but not like fall over the edge, but still like maintain my sense of clarity and direction, then you're more likely to find that path just kind of opening up for you, like step by step. And what you can create, as I said, is going to be much more real and exciting and juicy than if you just did what's normal. I remember a class I taught where I didn't have the materials that I needed to lead that class the way I normally did. And so I really had to improvise in the moment. And so I just, I brought in ideas, and I created exercises that we could just do without any of those materials and props, etc. And it was so interesting that like some people just came out of the class going, wow, that was way more fun, because now like we got you there. We didn't get the method. We actually experienced you and what you have to deliver to us. And that was a moment of recognition for me that, to put ourselves in places where everything isn't predictable, and we end up actually becoming much more authentic, and often like pull things out of ourselves that we never even thought to deliver or to share, and we find that can have a really wonderful impact on somebody else. So this has been more of a talk than like a teaching, but perhaps it's given you some food for thought, and about, where are you being authentic and real and connecting to your true self and creating in that kind of energy, because it's really exciting, and it just naturally is an enthusiastic way to create. But if you're feeling, dull and lifeless and bored and exhausted a lot of the time, then there's probably something that is off, and it's time to kind of wake up to yourself instead of just following the herd, what everybody else says you're supposed to do. So share in the comments anything that kind of came to you about what I've shared today, and I look forward to catching you in the next video.